My daughter-in-law smiled at me from across the kitchen table and said, "Drink your tea, Robert. It'll help you sleep." I didn't drink it. I poured it down the sink when she turned away. And that night, for the first time in 8 months, I didn't black out. I lay awake in the dark with my eyes open and my mind sharp, and I heard them talking downstairs. I heard every word. They were planning to put me in a home. Not a good home. A facility in rural Guatemala where no one would ask questions and no one would come looking. They'd already bought the tickets. 3 tickets, not 4. Now I knew the truth, and now I would destroy them. I'm grateful you're here. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never saw the knife until it was already in your back? Quick note, this story blends real awareness with dramatized elements for impact. But the lessons about trust and vigilance are absolutely real. Now let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Robert Langford. I'm 67 years old. I live, or I used to live, in a brick colonial on Maple Ridge Drive in Savannah, Georgia. The house has been in my family since 1962. My father built the back porch with his own hands. My wife, Helen, and I raised our son, Derek, in that house. Helen passed in 2020. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and merciless. She was here in April and gone by September. After she died, I rattled around that big house alone. Derek and his wife Pamela moved in 6 months later. Said they wanted to help. Said the house was too much for one man. Said I shouldn't be alone. I believed them because Derek was my son, and Pamela had always been sweet to me. She called me Dad. She brought me coffee in the mornings. She reminded me to take my vitamins. Except they weren't vitamins. It started in March of last year. I woke up one morning and couldn't remember what day it was. Not unusual for a man my age, I thought. But then it happened again. And again. By April, I was forgetting conversations from the day before. By May, I couldn't remember driving to the grocery store even though the bags were sitting on the counter. Pamela sat me down one evening with a serious face. "Dad, I think we need to talk about your memory." She told me she'd noticed the signs for weeks. The repeated questions, the confusion, the times I'd wander into the garage and forget why. She said she'd spoken to a specialist, Dr. Kessler, a neurologist at Candler Hospital. She said he'd reviewed my symptoms over the phone and recommended medication immediately. She handed me a small white pill. "For early-stage dementia," she said. "Doctor, Kessler says if we start now, we can slow it down." I took the pill. I trusted her. Helen would have told me to ask more questions. Helen would have said, "Robert, did you actually see this doctor? Did you sit in his office? Did he run tests?" But Helen was gone, and Pamela was here, and the pill was small and white, and I swallowed it with a glass of water and went to bed. 8 months. That's how long the fog lasted. 8 months of waking up confused, of sleeping 12, 14 hours a day, of looking at photographs of Helen and not being able to remember where they were taken. Derek handled the bills. Pamela handled my medication. They handled everything because I couldn't handle anything anymore. I was disappearing, and they were helping me disappear. But the night I poured the tea down the sink, January 14th of this year, everything changed. I'd been feeling strange all day. Not worse. Different. Pamela had been distracted that morning, rushing around the kitchen, and she'd handed me my pill late. I'd palmed it without thinking. Slipped it into my shirt pocket out of instinct I didn't even understand. By noon, the fog had thinned. By 3 o'clock, I could read the newspaper without losing my place. By dinner, I was thinking in complete sentences for the first time in months, and I was terrified, because if the pills were making me better, stopping them shouldn't make me sharper. Something was backward. Something was very wrong. That night, lying in the dark, I heard Derek's voice drifting up through the heating vent. The old house carried sound like a church. "The facility's confirmed," he said. "Doctor Morales runs it. Cash only. No American oversight. We fly into Guatemala City on the 26th, drive to Antigua, drop him off, and fly home." Pamela's voice was calm. "And the power of attorney? Filed last week. Judge signed off based on Kessler's letter. Dad's officially incompetent." My chest locked up. I couldn't breathe. What about the house? Pamela asked. Realtors coming Monday for an appraisal. Market's strong. We could clear 700,000, plus his retirement accounts, the life insurance, Helen's jewelry. And Grace? Pamela said. Grace, my granddaughter, 20 years old, junior at the Savannah College of Art and Design, the only person who still looked at me like I was a whole human being. Derek's voice hardened. Grace doesn't need to know. By the time she figures it out, he'll be in a facility 800 miles south of the border, with no phone and no passport. She'll cry for a month and move on. I lay there in the dark, my heart slamming against my ribs, and I understood. My son was going to lock me in a foreign institution, drain my accounts, sell my house, and erase me from existence. And Pamela, the woman who brought me coffee every morning, who called me Dad with that warm smile, she was the architect. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and I planned. At 5:30 in the morning, I got up, got dressed, and walked 2 miles to the Waffle House on Abercorn Street. The January air was cold and sharp, and it cleaned out the last of the fog like a river washing through mud. I sat in a booth and called the one person I trusted. My sister, Marlene, 71 years old, retired school principal, lived alone in a small house on Tybee Island, 20 minutes east of Savannah, tough as a railroad spike. Bobby, she said, using the name no one else used anymore. It's 6 in the morning. Marlene, I need help. She heard something in my voice. Tell me. I told her everything. The pills, the fog, the overheard conversation, Guatemala, the power of attorney. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, Don't go back to that house. Come to Tybee. Right now. I can't just disappear. They'll file a missing person report. They'll say I wandered off, confused. Then we move fast. I'm calling Judge Watkins. He owes me a favor from when I kept his son from getting expelled. And I'm calling my friend Evelyn at the hospital. If those pills are what I think they are, we need proof. Marlene, Bobby, listen to me. Your wife told me something before she died. She made me promise not to tell you, unless I had to. My blood went cold. What did she say? She said Pamela asked her to change the life insurance beneficiary. Asked her to add Derek as primary instead of Grace. Helen refused. She told me, Marlene, that woman is dangerous. If anything happens to me, watch Robert. The diner noise faded. Everything faded except Marlene's voice. Helen knew. I whispered. Helen knew. And she tried to protect you. Now it's my turn. I took a cab to Tybee Island. Marlene was waiting on the porch. Arms crossed, jaw set. She pulled me inside and sat me down at her kitchen table. By 8 o'clock, she'd made 4 phone calls. Evelyn Drake, a retired pharmacist at Memorial Health, agreed to test the pill I'd saved in my shirt pocket. Judge Ray Watkins agreed to review the power of attorney filing. And Marlene's neighbor, Tom Ashworth, a retired FBI agent who spent his days fishing and reading crime novels, agreed to do a background check on Pamela. Evelyn's results came back that afternoon. She called from her kitchen, where she'd used a home testing kit she still kept from her pharmacy days. Robert, this isn't dementia medication. This is a combination of lorazepam and diphenhydramine in doses that would sedate a man twice your size. Whoever gave you this wanted you unconscious, confused, and compliant. Marlene's hand tightened on the table. Can you put that in writing? I'll do better than that. I'll testify. That evening, Tom Ashworth knocked on Marlene's door. He was 6'4", white-haired, built like a man who'd spent 40 years chasing criminals because he had. He sat at the kitchen table with a manila folder. Pamela Morrison, born 1,984 inches, Macon, Georgia. Married once before Derek, to a man named Carl Beckett. I didn't know that. Derek never mentioned it. Carl Beckett died in 2015. House fire. Ruled accidental. Pamela inherited everything. House, savings, life insurance. About $160,000. Tom opened the folder. But here's what got my attention. Carl's mother filed a complaint with the Bibb County Sheriff 6 months before the fire. Said Pamela was isolating Carl from his family, controlling his medication, draining his checking account. Marlene leaned forward. What happened to the complaint? Nothing. Carl died before it was investigated. His mother tried to push it after the funeral, but without Carl's testimony, the case went nowhere. She died 2 years later. Heart failure. The kitchen was silent except for the ticking of Marlene's wall clock. There's more, Tom said. Pamela's first husband wasn't her first victim. Her aunt, Dorothy Morrison, died in 2012. Pamela was living with her at the time, caring for her. She said Dorothy was 78. Died in her sleep. Left Pamela $40,000 and a house in Warner Robins. I stared at the folder. How many people has she killed? I can confirm 3 suspicious deaths connected to her. Carl Beckett, Dorothy Morrison, and now potentially your wife. My vision blurred. Helen. Tom's voice was gentle. Robert, Helen's cancer was real, but I spoke to a friend at Candler Hospital today. He pulled her records. In the final 2 months of her life, her decline was significantly faster than her oncologist expected. He noted it in his charts but attributed it to the disease. You think Pamela accelerated it. I think it's worth investigating. I sat on Marlene's back porch that night, staring at the ocean. The waves were black under a moonless sky. Helen had loved this beach. We'd walked it 100 times, hand in hand, talking about retirement, about growing old together, about the grandchildren we'd spoil. She never got to grow old. She was 63 when she died, and I'd spent the last 4 years believing it was just the cancer. Just the cruel randomness of biology. But what if it wasn't random? What if Pamela had seen Helen weakening and pushed her over the edge? What if my wife's last weeks of suffering were manufactured by the woman sleeping under our roof? The phone rang at 9 the next morning. Grace. Grandpa, where are you? Dad says you wandered off again. He's talking about calling the police. Grace, listen to me carefully. I didn't wander off. I left. Your father and Pamela have been drugging me for 8 months. Silence. I know it sounds crazy, I said. I know it sounds like exactly what a confused old man would say. But I need you to come to Aunt Marlene's house on Tybee. I need you to see the evidence. A long pause. I'm on my way. Grace arrived 40 minutes later. She was pale, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes wide and scared. She sat at Marlene's kitchen table, and we showed her everything. The pill analysis from Evelyn, Tom's background report on Pamela, Helen's medical records, the overheard conversation about Guatemala. She read every page twice. When she finished, she looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. I knew something was wrong. You weren't yourself. But every time I said something, Pamela told me it was the dementia. She said questioning it would only upset you. She wiped her face. She lied to me. They both lied to me. Your father is involved, Grace. He knows about the pills. He arranged the facility in Guatemala. Her face crumpled, then it hardened. What do we do? 3 days later, we had a plan. Judge Watkins had reviewed the power of attorney and found irregularities. My supposed signature didn't match samples on file. And Dr. Kessler, the neurologist who allegedly certified my incompetence, didn't exist. No license in the state of Georgia. No practice. No phone number. A ghost. Watkins froze the POA and referred the case to the district attorney. Tom Ashworth had contacted the Chatham County DA's office directly. Detective Irene Voss, a specialist in elder abuse cases, took the lead. She was 45, no nonsense, with a reputation for breaking complex fraud cases wide open. She came to Marlene's house with a recorder and 2 hours of questions. Mr. Langford, we have enough to arrest them now, Voss said when I finished. But an arrest isn't a conviction. Pamela's smart. She'll lawyer up immediately and claim Derek acted alone or that you're confused. What do you need? A confession, or at minimum, an admission that she knew about the pills and the Guatemala plan. I looked at Marlene. She looked at Voss. You want to wire him, Marlene said. It's the fastest way. No. Marlene's voice was sharp. He's not bait. Marlene, I said. Bobby. She might try to hurt you. She's been hurting me for 8 months. This time, I'll be ready. Voss laid out the plan. I'd return to the house on Maple Ridge Drive. Act confused. Tell Derek and Pamela I'd been wandering and couldn't remember where I'd been. Let them think the fog was still there. And get Pamela talking. The morning of January 20th, I walked up the front steps of my own house wearing a wire under my flannel shirt. Voss and 3 plainclothes officers sat in an unmarked van on the next block. Grace waited at Marlene's, monitoring the audio feed on a laptop Voss had set up. Pamela opened the door before I could knock. Robert! Oh my God! Where have you been? She pulled me inside, her hands gripping my arms, her eyes scanning my face. I don't know, I mumbled. I was walking. I got confused. Derek came around the corner. Dad, we've been worried sick. We almost called the police. I'm sorry. I can't remember. Pamela guided me to the kitchen, sat me down, pressed a mug of tea into my hands. Drink this. You need to rest. I held the mug. Didn't drink. Pamela, those pills you give me, what are they again? For your dementia, Dad. Dr. Kessler prescribed them. I tried to call Dr. Kessler's office. The number doesn't work. A flicker behind her eyes. Just a flicker. Then the smile returned. That's because they moved offices. I'll get you the new number. Is there really a Dr. Kessler? The smile didn't waver, but something in her posture shifted. Derek stepped into the kitchen. Dad, why are you asking about this? You need to rest. I just want to understand what's wrong with me. The pills, they make me sleep so much. I feel like I'm losing myself. Pamela sat across from me. She reached for my hand. Her touch was warm, gentle. Robert, I know it's hard, but the medication is keeping you stable. Without it, you'd deteriorate fast. Dr. Kessler said the confusion, the memory loss, it would get so much worse. Is that why you're sending me to Guatemala? The kitchen went dead silent. Derek froze in the doorway. Pamela's hand stiffened on mine. What? She said. I heard you, 3 nights ago. Through the vent. You said there was a facility in Antigua. Cash only. No American oversight. Derek's face drained of color. Dad, you misheard. I heard everything, Derek. The house sale. The retirement accounts. Helen's jewelry. I looked at Pamela. And I heard you ask about Grace. Whether she'd be a problem. Pamela's mask cracked. Not all at once. It peeled away in layers, like paint off old wood. First, the smile vanished. Then the warmth left her eyes. What remained was flat and cold and calculating. You stopped taking the pills, she said. It wasn't a question. 3 days ago. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms. Well, that's inconvenient. Pamela Derek started. Shut up, Derek. Her voice was a blade. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Or maybe I'd always seen it, and the fog had hidden it from me. You want to know the truth, Robert? Fine. There is no Dr. Kessler. The pills are sedatives. I've been giving them to you since March because you're worth more to me confused than coherent. My hands shook. You poisoned me. I managed you. There's a difference. You were never going to die from the pills. You were going to live a long, quiet, comfortable life in a facility where people would feed you and bathe you, and you'd never know the difference. Meanwhile, your house, which is worth $730,000, by the way, not the 580. You think your retirement accounts, your life insurance, all of it would fund the life Derek and I actually deserve. The life you deserve? I married into this family, Robert. I earned it. 7 years of pretending to care about your war stories and your fishing trips and your dead wife's recipes. She leaned forward. Do you know what it's like to smile at someone every single day when you can't stand them? Derek was pressed against the wall, pale, silent. And Helen? I said. Did you earn that too? Something shifted in Pamela's face. A tiny spark of satisfaction. Helen was dying anyway. The cancer was going to kill her in 6 months. I just moved the timeline up by 8 weeks. The room tilted. How? Morphine. She had a prescription for pain management. I increased the dose gradually. The hospice nurses never questioned it because the symptoms matched the disease. By the end, she was sleeping 20 hours a day. Just like you. Tears burned my eyes. You killed my wife. I freed her. And I freed myself. 40 years of marriage to you was a life sentence, Robert. Helen just served hers early. Derek's voice came out strangled. Pam, what are you talking about? You said Mom died naturally. You said I said what you needed to hear so you'd stay useful. She turned to him with contempt. You think I married you for love? You're a 42-year-old man who can't hold a job for more than 18 months. You were a means to an end. Your father's end. Derek slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. I heard the front door open behind me. Footsteps. Detective Voss's voice. Calm and absolute. Pamela Morrison Langford. Stand up. You're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and the murder of Helen Langford. Pamela didn't move. She looked at me, and for one moment I saw it not fear, not regret, but rage. Pure, uncut rage that I had outsmarted her. You're wearing a wire, she said. Every word recorded, Voss confirmed, stepping past me. Officers are waiting outside. Stand up, hands behind your back. Pamela stood slowly. She smoothed her blouse. She looked at Derek on the floor and said, You're pathetic. Then she looked at me. You're a dead man walking, Robert. You just don't know it yet. Voss cuffed her and walked her out the front door. Through the window, I watched them put her in the back of a patrol car. She sat perfectly still, back straight, face blank, like she was waiting for a cab. Derek was sobbing on the kitchen floor. I looked at him, my son. The boy I'd taught to throw a football. The teenager I'd driven to prom. The man I'd trusted with my life, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, nothing. Voss came back inside. Mr. Langford, we need Derek's statement. He's a co-conspirator, but if he cooperates, the DA may offer a reduced charge. I looked at Derek. You heard her, I said. Your turn. Derek talked for 2 hours. He confessed to everything. The fake diagnosis, the pills, the Guatemala plan, the forged power of attorney. He said Pamela had approached him in January of last year, told him I was showing signs of dementia, said the kind thing would be to take control before I hurt myself. He said she'd researched the sedatives, obtained them through someone she knew he didn't know who, and planned the entire scheme. He said he'd gone along with it because they were $200,000 in debt from a failed restaurant investment, and he was terrified of losing everything. I told myself it wasn't that bad, he said, tears running down his face. I told myself you'd be happier in a facility, that you wouldn't know the difference. Did you know she killed your mother? His face collapsed. No, I swear. I didn't know until just now. I didn't believe him completely. Maybe I never would. The trial came 5 months later. June. The Chatham County Courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the back rows. Grace sat beside me in the front, her hand in mine. Marlene sat on my other side. Evelyn Drake testified about the pills. Tom Ashworth presented his investigation into Pamela's past. Carl Beckett's death. Dorothy Morrison's death. The pattern of isolation, drugging, and financial exploitation. Detective Voss played the recording. Pamela's voice filled the courtroom. I managed you. Helen was dying anyway. I just moved the timeline up. The jury was out for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Murder in the 2nd degree. Attempted murder. Elder abuse. Financial exploitation. Fraud. The judge sentenced Pamela to 40 years to life. No parole. As the officers led her away, she looked at me one last time. Her expression was empty. Not defeated. Empty. Like she'd already moved on to calculating her next move, even though there would never be another move. Derek pleaded guilty to conspiracy and elder abuse. He got 8 years. The judge said he could have gotten 20, but his cooperation and testimony reduced the sentence. I visited him once, at the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison in Jackson. He sat behind the glass, looking 10 years older than 42. I'm sorry, Dad. he said through the phone. I know. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at my son. I remembered him at 6 years old, running through the sprinklers in the backyard, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. I remembered him at 18, shaking the dean's hand at graduation. I remembered him standing next to Pamela at their wedding, looking at her like she'd hung the moon. I don't know, I said. I want to, but I don't know if I can. He nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just sat there and accepted it. And that was the closest thing to respect he'd shown me in years. I drove back to Savannah with the windows down. The Georgia air was thick and warm and smelled like salt marsh and honeysuckle. I thought about Helen, about the walks on Tybee Beach, the Sunday mornings reading the paper on the porch, the way she'd hum off key while she cooked. I thought about the 40 years we had and the years Pamela stole, and I thought about what came next. Grace graduated from SCAD in May. She'd switched her concentration to visual advocacy, using art and design to raise awareness about elder abuse. Her thesis exhibition, Invisible Wounds, featured portraits of elder abuse survivors. It ran for 3 weeks and was covered by the Savannah Morning News, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and CNN. She told me she wanted to go to law school next. Art changes hearts, she said, but law changes systems. I told her Helen would have cried with pride. I almost did. That September, Marlene and I launched the Helen Langford Foundation. We held the first event at the Savannah Civic Center. 200 people showed up. Social workers, nurses, police officers, seniors, families. I stood at the podium and told my story. All of it. The pills, the fog, the overheard conversation, the wire, the trial. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a woman in the third row stood up. My mother, she said, her voice breaking. They're doing this to my mother. Marlene was at her side in 30 seconds. That night, we helped our first family. We've helped 93 since. I still live in the house on Maple Ridge Drive. Some mornings, I sit on the back porch my father built and drink coffee and listen to the cardinals in the live oaks. Sometimes I talk to Helen. I tell her about Grace, about the foundation, about the people we've helped. I tell her I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I tell her I miss her every day, and some mornings, when the light is right and the breeze comes off the marsh just so, I swear I can hear her voice. You did good, Bobby. Now keep going. I'm 67 years old. I was drugged by someone I trusted, betrayed by my own son, and nearly erased from my own life. But I'm still here. My mind is clear. My house is mine. My granddaughter is changing the world. And the woman who tried to destroy us is spending the rest of her life behind concrete walls. If you're watching this, and something feels wrong, if someone you love is changing your medication without explanation, if your accounts don't add up, if you feel foggy and confused and you can't figure out why, trust yourself. Write it down. Tell someone. Don't wait. Because the people who do this, they count on silence. They count on trust. They count on you being too confused, or too afraid, or too polite to ask questions. Don't give them that power. Fight back. Even if your hands shake, even if your voice cracks, even if the person hurting you is the person you love most in this world. Fight back, because your life is worth fighting for. Drop a comment if this story moved you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. You never know whose life you might save. God bless you. Stay sharp, stay connected, and never stop fighting.